So I was going to start by talking to you, Kevin, about the Boardroom, which is the business venture that the two of you co-founded. You'll be happy to hear that I spent quite a lot of time looking at the website. I can safely say I'm not the target demographic. However, well, you can elaborate. Good. Well, I can sort of see what you're doing. What I want to know is when you set it up, Kevin first, what was the sort of demographic that you identified, or who's the audience you're going after with this? Because there's a lot in the sports and entertainment space. What gap did you see?
We didn't have a target, demographic, but we just wanted to build a place where people can come and see the intersection between all of these things.
Okay, so Rich, why am I the target demographic?
Well, you will be. I mean, I think like the backstory for us was that I grew up in talent management and music and sports, and in managing talent got to experience opening a restaurant, producing a film, and there was never one part of it that I loved and one part of it that I didn't love. I loved it all. I loved the action around the hip-hop culture and sport culture that I grew up in. But what happened was when we partnered and some of the places that we were able to go, it dawned on us that it was sports ultimately that got us in these rooms. And I think if young me and young Kevin had known that all of these worlds intersected the way they did, that it would have been something that we would have consumed as much of it as we could. So the idea was to just create a brand that really embodied that intersection, truly embodied it. Like, we live in it. A lot of people like to talk about it, but being a professional basketball player, being someone that's been around the music and sports space for 27 years, I think we had the right perspective and look at it, and I think it's always going to be rooted in sports. But as you've seen us evolve now into talking more about business and tech and fashion and art and music, that's where I see our demo continuing to expand. And I think we've always looked at it a little bit like the modern-day sports fan who doesn't need to watch every game, but the culture of sport, same reason why we're sitting here on this panel, is something that has great influence. So I think it was always built to be centered around sport at the core, to talk about all the worlds that intersect with it.
So, Kevin, I know you've never taken any outside capital for Boardroom. Will you ever?
At some point, who knows? But for now, we want to continue to keep building. We like the progress that we've made so far. I mean, we've done so much in a short period of time. We worked so hard that we want to keep building and see where this can go.
So can you? You can decide who answers this question. Is it more of a B2B play or a B2C play? And tell us a bit more about the revenue model.
Yeah. Well, we built it originally as a traditional digital media platform, but we also had the insight from being investors at the same time that probably was not going to be a sustainable or investable model, being that the media landscape was changing. But to create a brand from scratch that truly resonated, that was able to galvanize artists and athletes to want to be a part of it, we had to build it through some of those traditional methods. So putting out a daily newsletter, putting out short form video, putting out editorial. But when the business started to really evolve is when we brought it into the physical. So I think there is a B2B component in that our events integrate both consumer and industry, and it allows us to create revenue streams from partners that come to our events. But the idea is that our events, then you see them on social, you see them in our content, people want to be at our events, and it brings more of a brand affinity to the actual brand. And we didn't raise money because we knew that, and we also knew that that was not going to be the way to truly create a brand that connected with the community. It wasn't about money. It was about committing consistently to doing things and showing up where our brand was relevant. And if we did that over and over and over again and did it authentically, starting with the two of us, that the brand would resonate. And once that has, now it's about figuring out how to truly monetize it. And when brands are partnering with us, they're investing into the whole ecosystem. They may want branded content. They may want to show up at our events and parties. They may want a level of strategy from us or talent alignment. But I think at some point there'll be a partner for us where our brand fits nicely aligned with it. And if that comes about, we'll look at it. But right now, like, we fund it with the revenue we get from brands. Brands pay us to be within our content, our events, or as an advisory consultant basis. And next year, we'll look to launch 1 or 2 new revenue streams, probably around membership and products, something we're really excited about.
Mm-hmm. So you launched the company in 2019. To what extent, Kevin, did the pandemic kind of turbocharge its inception?
Yeah, I mean, it was just having a platform to just be present, I think just being around, just having a place where people can come and get information and trust that information that they're getting as well. So You know, the pandemic was obviously a tough time for everybody, but everybody was looking for places to, receive information. I think we became an outlet for people they trust what we're doing, they trust what we say, and we continue to keep building from there.
And I noticed as well when you're on the website, there's people are very much encouraged to sign up for the newsletters. Is that a data collection exercise going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still like a very personal relationship you can have digitally, having somebody's email and being able to directly communicate with them. I also think that, the newsletters that we put out, one a day for the entire week, one that's focused around tech, one that's focused around the business of sneaker culture, one that's a bit more of a curated news feed of all the things we love, which is, I do think, something you would like, that product. And the idea for that is that, like, we're continuing to build our audience and community. What we don't want to do is just build new IP within Boardroom or build new shows and get brands to sponsor it. I think our brand Boardroom is the brand that has the value. So what we try to do is create as many Boardroom products that we give the consumers as frequently as possible.
Okay, so here's something that I like, and something that I appreciate very much in the way you two approach things, and that's your attitude towards women's sport, which you treat as an equal to men's sport, which, having worked in newspapers, I can tell you is highly unusual. Tell me, Kevin, do you think, whether it's basketball or elsewhere, soccer, do you feel like women's sport is now finally being taken, given the same amount of attention that men's sport traditionally has?
I think it's getting there. I think we still got a ways to go to really hit its potential, but I think it's getting there. The respect for the sport, more respect for the sport is starting to gain over time. You see how hard these women work every single day. You're getting to see the content they make inside their lives. You see how they work every single day, and so the respect is growing every single day, and that's going to help the business as well. So yeah, I see it growing. I see it eventually competing with the men's sports, but we still got a long ways to go. And I think it's on us to continue to keep pushing that, and we use our platforms to do so.
I can't not ask you about Caitlin Clark and how the excitement that she generated for the WNBA. Do you think, what more can be done now to build on that excitement around her? And I've got to ask, should she have been picked for the Olympics?
I still think it's proper steps you got to take in our world to be considered an Olympian. Yeah. I think she's going to definitely be on one of these teams going forward, but right now there's better candidates out there, I think. But Caitlin just got to continue to keep showing up every day, and the WNBA is doing a great job of showcasing her. I see in her games on ESPN every other day. I see in talks around her, no matter what they're talking about. There's a lot of dialogue around the game right now, so that's good as well. But I think as she continues to keep getting better as a player, her production on the court gets better, then the league will grow, along with some of the other women as well who are coming in. Asia Wilson. There's so many great players in our league that Caitlin has helped shining that light on them, and that'll help the league grow over time.
Rich, do you think there's still lots of growth in women's sport?
Yeah, of course. There's a ton of growth, but I think as important and what will help that growth a lot will be more of an education. And I think what you're seeing is this lack of education around the sport and a bit of a layman's approach to thinking. The idea that Caitlin Clark would have made the Olympic team is just not realistic. She wasn't one of the 12 best players in the WNBA, nor should she have probably assumed she would be as a rookie. And I think that's where the education is still off, right? The fact that someone thinks that Caitlin Clark may be the best player in the world because they're not looking at the sport the same way that they look at men's sports. And I think for us, even before all of this focus the last few years, we found it a very relevant part of the conversation. And our goal at Boardroom is to curate all the things that we believe are relevant to talk about and important to talk about. And women's sports has been something that we've loved as fans for a long time. We invested because there was great business opportunities. It happened to be in women's sports. But as a fan, 10, 12 years ago on his Nike tours, we would always stop at the girls' nationals. Kevin's always been a supporter of the W before everyone's attention was turned to it. So we know the sport, but I think it's important to bring the stories and the stakes and the rivalries and the education to the consumer, because when you're armed with that, then you become a real fan, and that's still missing a bit from women's sports.
So you're both, big investors through your startups, through the 35 Ventures outfit. What are you thinking of? Where are you going to look next for future investments in startups? Kevin?
We want to invest in teams going forward.
Yeah.
Sports teams. That's really been our goal from the beginning when we started investing. You know, but who knows? You know, I think
You going to reveal something for us? Go on, give us a scoop.
Maybe.
We want to own an NBA team one day, but we got a lot of work to do.
You want to own
an NBA team one day, but we got a lot of work to do. And I think the investing in sports teams has been a win-win-win for us because we believe in the investments, but in terms of gaining audience, we've been able to tap into the communities of Gotham FC, of the Philadelphia Union, of PLL, the Professional Lacrosse League. And I think it's also given us like an incredible visibility into what it could look like in the future. Because when we made an investment in the Philadelphia Union, he was sitting with the coach and the GM, talking to them about how they operate their team on the performance side, and I was sitting there talking to the CEO and the head of operations, and we're educating, and we're also then using our platform to help amplify the team. And I think that is what new media is. Like, we've been shameless in saying, look, this is our platform. We're going to support Gotham FC because we made an investment in them. And I think what it does is allow the consumer to believe everything else we say. Because if we're going to be very open about the fact that we're going to support the teams we invested in more so than maybe another team, even though we'll support the whole league. And that's been something I think from an investment standpoint that's been an advantage to us. Because I think other teams that have reached out to us see that we really are not just trying to put money on the cap table, but that we really want to understand the business they're in and be like a true valued investor.
And are you for now sticking to the US, or have you thought about investing outside the US?
Yeah, definitely thought about it, but for now, just sticking to the US.
Yeah.
Who knows? We can expand at any time.
While you're here.
Exactly.
F1, I mean, F1 is not a US thing, but something that we're like,
but
obviously.
It's growing in the US,
it's
big
growing
time,
big time
really
in the US,
growing. Yeah.
So like that's an example of like F1 and the Grammys and weekends like that are how we're starting to expand our brand into different audiences, because the business of is something we can speak about universally. So F1's been a kind of flagship moment on the calendar where we've activated, and it's been really powerful for us.
But also what's so interesting about F1 is it was popularized in the US through the Netflix documentary. So, you know, it's very much your world.
Yeah.
Talking of which, I mean, Kevin, you know, the Apple TV show Swagger about a high school basketball prodigy was said to be inspired by your experience. And obviously it was, you know, people love stories of athletes. Who do you think are the athletes, aside from yourself, who are out there, who are telling their stories well?
So many. There's so many. To name a few, I mean, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, God bless his soul, Kobe Bryant. His story's still being told every day. I mean, so many people and players that, former players, present players, that tell their stories, inspiring people around the world. Definitely what I wanted to do as we started to build our business is not just tell my story, but the story that, you know, so many different stories intersect the game of basketball and business. And Swagger was one of those shows that I wanted people to know just the journey it takes to get to where we are, you know. So the more and more of those stories, the more inspiring we can do around the world, and the bigger we can make this thing. So, yeah, I miss, you know, so many guys in my business that's doing the same thing.
So you were an executive producer on that show. How involved were you, and what was the experience like?
It was incredible. So from day one, me and Reggie, the director, producer, we sat down and we just went over every story that I had as a kid coming up in the youth basketball scene, and he put it together. And from picking the cast to the location to everything, we were involved, and that's what made it special to us. And to get it on Apple and then to see the reception to it was incredible.
And I just got calls when there was problems. That's honestly all that happened.
Did they send you the scripts?
Yeah, we were involved early, especially just because like the show was birthed out of the idea that his rec center growing up was really where he experienced life and understood and learned everything. And all I heard was stories from him and his friends of this rec center. So I think it was about honoring it in the beginning and making sure that it didn't go off course a bit. But Reggie did an incredible job. But Apple apparently didn't seem to think so after season 2.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Take it somewhere else.
All right, my bad.
So I'm going to get a little bit more technical now, which is about the NBA close to finalizing its long-term TV deals. And I think we're getting to a point now where, for the first time ever, some consumers may need a streaming subscription to watch some national NBA games. And I'm curious to know from both of you whether you think consumers are ready for that.
I think so. What I know about NBA fans is they find the game. They find it anywhere. And I think the NBA does a good job of presenting the game to its consumers. So the more, places that you can watch the games, so many people got different apps that don't, and people that have TNT, so the more the better, I think. I think we're spreading the game across the world, and we're getting more and more viewers every single day. That's the reason why we have such a huge TV deal right now. So I think it's going to be incredible for the league going forward.
I mean, the more the better, but isn't it also very confusing for consumers? You've got to have so many different subscriptions now. I mean, I don't know what your view on that is, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, it is confusing. I think when there was 1,000 channels on broadcast cable in the beginning, it was confusing for me as well. And I think this is just part of the evolution of how consumers are going to get their content from now on. And I do think the streaming services need to do a better job of educating the offering and the opportunity. There needs to be a better user experience overall. But we will evolve with it. And like he said, I think that's why they can get $7.5 billion, because there's nothing else that can replicate it. It's why Warner and Turner are having the controversy around whether they get it or not get it, because it's that big of a deal. It can put a network out, in some ways, and it can also completely elevate a network. I think we all only know TNT because of the NBA. So it is confusing for sure. I mean, I think even the announcement that Warner, ESPN, and NBC made, that I understood at that time. But since they announced it till now, it's yet to launch, and it all of a sudden doesn't make all the sense in the world. So I think that technology is just evolving. This is all evolving so quickly and so fast that we'll have to keep up with it. But I do think these tech companies need to do a way better job of kind of educating us on the offering.
So something else that's evolving very quickly is sports betting in the US. And the NBA's just been through its first real scandal with a lifetime ban on a player. Are you concerned that this could turn into a wider problem?
I mean, how much more of a problem can it get?
Well, look at Europe. Yeah.
I mean, once they introduced it the first time, then they opened the gates for everything, So, like everything, we learn how to adapt. I don't think it's affected the product. Maybe the watching experience may change for the consumer, the viewer, but I don't think the product has changed, and I don't think there's much we can do about it, to be honest.
Do you agree, Rich? Do you think the horse has bolted?
Yeah, I mean, look, they caught him, which I think, people tend to forget. The system is not broken. He used a legal gambling platform, and the algorithm was like, this doesn't sound right, and he got in trouble. But I think it brings more eyeballs and focus, and where I think the big opportunity is going to be around gambling on women's sports, because however you look at it, it brings people's attention to the product, and it creates stakes and rivalries, and it makes you focus in a bit more on what the outcome should be or can be. But I don't see it being a bigger problem. It's been so rampant in society, whether it was legalized or not legalized. Everyone always had access to gamble, and honestly, players were gambling. But it's not something that they do across the board, and I don't see it as a bigger issue. I see it as a lot more money coming into the league, for sure.
So I'm curious to ask you, you've obviously been partners now in business, and before that in sport. The transition from being a professional athlete to life afterwards is not an easy or obvious one, and a lot of people don't. You've obviously made a great success of it. What advice would you give? Because it's certainly some athletes don't make that transition very successfully. What do you think is the key?
Transitioning to retirement?
Steady on.
Me?
Yeah, I mean.
I still feel like I got a few more years.
Well, I know you're still playing. I know.
But from what I've heard, it's a tough experience.
You're setting yourself up for the future.
I'm
Put
trying
it that way.
to.
Setting yourself up for the future.
I know it'll be a tough transition because, I do this every day, and this is what I'm focused on, is getting better at my craft every day. So when I don't have to do that, I know it'll be a total change.
There'll be something for you to land on. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we're setting it up right now. So other stuff that I'm interested in, I can jump in pretty quickly. But yeah, I know it's going to be a tough transition. Hopefully,
how much time how do you divide your time at the moment between sport and business and?
It's different for different days.
I just text him 50 times a day, and
And
he
he
responds
ignores
to the amount that he wants. That's the balance, right?
Well, I'll call him at wee hours of the morning and just vent or talk about whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like that for us, and that's how I think we built our business, is just organically just having conversation about what we like to do, what's on our minds, and it just built from there. And I think that's how our relationship grew as men as well.
Yeah. What's your view? I mean, not more generally about how what's the contribution that people like Kevin and other athletes, in a wider sort of perspective can.
Yeah, I think it's changed even as he's gotten older. Your ability, your capacity to kind of balance them both emotionally and talk about certain things, but be able to stay as locked in may be harder for some players earlier in their career. And I think that's probably in some ways a good thing, because I do think part of the process is that it doesn't get lost on us that even though I believe I'm incredibly talented, what he's been able to do on the basketball court has allowed us to build and has powered and fueled so much of what we've built. So it was important to always honor that first, and it doesn't even need to be said. When he's checked out or he doesn't want to talk business, we won't talk business. But it's naive sometimes of people to think that he couldn't manage being one of the best basketball players in the world and taking a 20-minute phone call every other day from me or a partner of someone that we have to speak to. But early in career, because of the opportunities that are coming to these athletes and because of how astute they are and knowledgeable about business, which I don't think people understand. These are like 17, 18-year-old kids that know more about business and the struggles and money than any of us did at those ages. But they almost have too much information, and you still have to honor your craft and do that first. But I think what happens is by the time you get to this point in Kevin's career, he's already learned how to balance it. And it's not like basketball will be gone when he's done playing. He won't be playing, but it'll be still such a part of his life that it'll always be a balance.
So, Kevin, I've got to ask, you've had some pretty tense interactions with sports journalists in the past. How would you describe the relationship between athletes and sports media, at least in the NBA right now?
I think it's great. I think it's. I think you have a lot of guys telling their own stories and pushing their own narratives, and I feel like the stories could be told the right way from the guys that are actually in it, and I think media also plays a part as well as telling it from their perspective outside of the arena, outside of the court, outside the lines, and that plays a part as well. But I think both sides have been working with each other pretty well in our business to push the game forward, and I think that's what I like to see. I see, for example, Draymond Green, what he's doing with his podcast, and Paul George, so many players that are telling their own stories and doing it the right way. Maybe it can build a career after the game. That's what I love about it, and that's inspiring so many young guys as well to tell their own stories and control their narratives as well. So, yeah, I like what the relations are, and it's good to tell the truth. I think most of the time when I have these spats, I guess, with the journalists, I try my hardest to tell the truth about the game, and they respect me for it at the end of the day.
Always a good idea to tell the truth, definitely. Yeah. Look, I am guessing that there are people in the crowd who would like to ask questions of Kevin or Rich. So if you've got any questions, here.
Hi, guys. I'm Kat Randall from Pop Venture. So, Kevin, we utilize you as the champion of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs in so many of our pitches because we really love your investment strategy and how you have invested in so many companies. I'm curious, what is the thing that motivates you around finding newer, or you guys talked about things like F1, but you have invested in so many small businesses that are up and coming, doing different things. Why is that tie back to the community so important to you, and how do you plan to take that forward? I see you really, we talk about you all the time. We're like, do you guys know about Kevin Durant? He's the greatest guy when it comes to investing in small business, SMEs. So tell us.
Yeah, I just want to align myself with people that got good values, that want to help grow the earth in general, that want to build community, and so we run across so many people with bright ideas, and simply just want to empower them to do their best, and see what happens after that. So just trying to find good people. That's really what it is.
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. My name's Steve Griffith from Fish Tank London. So we're an entrepreneurial incubator working with communities to build young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged communities, doing it very well at the moment. I really love what you're saying about community and bring community forward. Recently in London, we've had 777 come into London to look at how they build the infrastructure for basketball, which I think is quite an interesting concept around, as you both alluded to, sportsmen are entrepreneurs and really good businessmen, especially very young. So I'm just wondering, is there something in that in terms of your own business sort of ideas to work with community, to grow community, not just with basketball, with other ventures as well, as someone just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, we've built 35 and refurbished 35 basketball courts in some of the most underserved communities around the world. We just got back from Stockholm, where we built 2 courts in what they call the no-go zone, where the police don't even go. And when Kevin surprised these 150 kids that didn't know he was coming, it was about as rewarding of an experience as you could ever have in life. I think what we've tried to do is arm them with as many resources as possible. When we were in the Bay, we partnered with Lorene Jobs and took her college track program to Suitland, Maryland, and we bought a building there, put the college track program in the ground floor, and then built not-for-profit programming throughout the building. And I think what we've seen is our role. Obviously, Kevin himself is inspiring, and he's put his own money where his mouth is, but I think for us, it's about bringing all the people in our ecosystem and bringing all the resources and just arming these kids with things that they just, frankly, would never get. You know, education around certain things that will give them a bit of a differentiator as they go into life. And I do agree that building these basketball courts and building these parks, while it seems a bit simple, it sits there as this like pillar of like a symbol that, you know what, Kevin came here, he cared about us. And you could see that with these kids in Sweden the other day. It was just like a miracle had happened that day. And like however long that they could take that moment with them, maybe the rest of their life, I think for us it's just about repeating those things over and over again.
Got questions over here?
Over here.
Oh, sorry.
Question about a little bit more around business, what's happening in college basketball or college sports with NIL. How do you see that changing the way in which what was an amateur system, which is now a professional system starting in college, affecting both players coming into the NBA, salaries, because these kids are making a lot of money and they're sophomores and freshmen in college. So how do you see the future of NIL impacting the league?
I think, didn't they just pass a rule where the colleges can pay the players directly now, right? So you don't have to go through companies to get. I think that's a game changer as well, because you go directly to the colleges now and negotiate a contract. But I don't think it'll affect what we do in the NBA or the business in the NBA. I think that's a whole separate thing. I like the idea that players start to profit off of what they do at the amateur level. I think they're starting to become more, business astute earlier, like you said, at 15, 16 years old now, meeting guys with agents, and they got plans for their business moving forward. They're asking questions that I wouldn't even have known to ask at that age. But it's pros and cons to everything. It can be, it can dilute the game. It can, cause players not even to have drive to play the game of basketball no more. It's a lot that can happen, but you can look at the positive sides as well and see how it's benefiting these kids all across the country at all levels.
And I'll just add to that. I think a lot of times when people talk about their feelings and their sentiments on NAL, they're instantly talking about football and basketball. And I think what it's really meant to do is give an opportunity to all of the college athletes. Basketball and football have been run like a business forever. Even when it was an NIL, it was as much of a business and as transactional. It was just under the table. I think right now it's this weird purgatory because there's no regulation. It's like in New York, they legalized marijuana, but they didn't actually put any guidelines in place. So there was 700 smoke shops opened, and now they're closing them all. And in a lot of ways, that's what's happening in college basketball. There's this whole time period now where no one knows what they're doing. So whoever has the most money is paying players and getting players. But the trickle-down effect to women's volleyball and men's soccer and women's tennis and lacrosse and field hockey is having a real impact. Because these were kids that if they had the personality to build a social influencer channel for themselves to make money while they were in college, if they, God forbid, took a $20 check, they could lose their eligibility. And that didn't get any press. You only heard about Reggie Bush. So I think it's just been a part of the game. I think regulation is needed badly. Every coach that I've spoken to, they say you would never expect them to respond. They go, no idea what's going on. I mean, these are the top D1 coaches in the world. No idea what's going on. We're just going until they tell us what to do. So I think that's where, like, the problem has to be fixed.
I think we've got another question over here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Rich. So just to expatiate on some of the other questions around investing in small businesses, in terms of your scope, is that sort of just US-based or is that sort of global in terms of when you look at businesses?
Are you looking for investment?
No.
Oh, I mean, we've seen obviously more companies. Are you wearing a Bengals jersey? Yeah, I like it.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I just thought it was dope. I like it. We see obviously majority of our deal flow domestically, and we also have kind of made it clear that we're really focused on like sports and sports adjacent businesses. Obviously, when we were in the Valley, we had built tremendous deal flow. My good friend Chris Lyons right here from A16 was really early on in building its deal flow pipeline for us, and I think we really showed Chris how powerful someone like Kevin could be if they rolled their sleeves up and didn't just lend their name. But we see things, I think it's just about spending more time. You know, I think what goes like lost sometimes is you do have to develop real relationships in venture as well. You know, I think out here everybody's networking and trying to get access to brands, but the same way we approach our relationships with brands is how we approached investors and venture capital firms and other founders. So I think the more time we spend internationally and we start meeting some of these young founders, because that's the beautiful part of our deal flow now, is it's not from VC firms. You know, Chris is probably the exception. It is from founders that have talked about the impact Kevin's had on their life or what our business has been able to do or how powerful Boardroom was in marketing it. So the more we expand that conversation, I think we'll see more deal flow.
Right. Oh, one more question I think we've got time for.
I can yell it. So relatively new owner in Phoenix and someone who's got some progressive ideas about how to think through. I'm sort of curious both in terms of how you think about your future and potentially an ownership position of an NBA team, but to what degree does he engage with you and others on the team with some of the ideas and some of the ways, you know, including access to games, you know, in different ways? Is he involve you in that process? Any things that you're learning from him, or?
Not necessarily involve me in that type of process. I mean, we obviously what goes on with the team, the day-to-day operations with the team, we talk about. And Matt is such a great guy. He doesn't mind a suggestion here and there. But it was his idea with the Arizona Family Network to get the games free to everybody in the state of Arizona. I thought that was an incredible idea to expand our fan base a little bit more in Arizona. But the day-to-day, man, he's calling me every day about what players do I like or what do you think about, he's watching film, he's watching basketball. So to have an owner that is really that invested in the players from every aspect, everybody that works for the Suns, he's invested in. He's built a new facility for the women's, for the Mercury downtown, $100 million facility for them. Got a new G League team this year. So he really wants to make a winner in Phoenix, and the owners that come in there and just hit the ground running and start spending immediately, those are the ones that usually have success. It might not start early on, but in the long term, it's a sustainable model for you to continue to just be involved every day. And he's one of those guys that's in it.